Hi, my name is Daria Mezantsova and welcome to Politeka World Show. In today's show, we will talk about the following. Another week of war is crunching towards the end. What are the changes of the positions of Ukrainian army on the front line? What changes have been occurred this week in the war of Ukraine? We will talk about it with our expert. With us today, the military expert, Mykhaylo Samus. Mykhaylo, I'm happy to have you here.
Hello, thanks for inviting me. I'm happy to be with you for this discussion.
Yes, so Mykhaylo, let's start from the situation on the front line. So another week of war is crunching towards the end. How would you measure the changes of the positions of Ukrainian army this week?
This week we had actually the pretty stable situation. It looks like stable situation. It was very tense, a lot of tensions on the front line, but the generally situation was stable in case of Ukrainian forces continuing to prepare next counteroffensive operations, offensive operations. I would call it like shaping operations, because Ukrainian forces, by using of high precision weapon like HIMARS and another high precision artillery destroyed the command post, the ports, the personnel of Russian forces in different areas, especially on Lugansk Oblast, on Svatovo direction, and Zaporizhia Oblast on Mariupol direction. In the same time, Russians continued trying to break through Ukrainian defense on Bahmut direction, and even it was very tough for Ukrainian defenders, but they still continue to keep the Bahmut city. And I think that for Russian next week will be not so, let's say, successful in continue of these operations. It looks like Ukrainian forces is preparing for counterattack even on Bahmut direction, and it will be disaster for Russian dreams and plans on this area, because it looks like actually Bahmut operation for Russians were only mostly political meaning and political intentions on this. It was a Putin decisions to have at least something to call victory, because it's very close to New Year, and Putin needs to say something to Russians, to Russian population, why they started these so-called special military operations, why these special military operations so long, why they have a lot of killed and wounded soldiers, actually Russian men and young men, and it's very difficult to explain if they back to 24th of February, when Russians actually planned a very fast operation, even without war, just occupied Kiev, kill Zelensky, and put Yanukovych or somebody else to Ukrainian government and Ukrainian leadership. So I think it's a tough time for Putin. He's trying to get at least some victory, and that's why they try to get some territories close to Bakhmut and of course the Bakhmut city. But I think it won't be any such results for Russians, and it will be very difficult for Putin explain all of these questions which arising from, I hope, from deep Russian population.
Yeah, and also we heard recently the words of the head of the president's office, Andriy Yermak, and he told us that Russia is trying to stretch the front in order to prevent a catastrophic situation for themselves. So, according to his words, the enemy is shelling Cherson, trying to create the appearance of activity in the north, like a zombie climbs into the position in Bahmut, and creates pressure in the south of Donetsk region. So, Mykhaylo, how do you estimate this tendency aggravates the future counteroffensive for Ukrainian army?
If you're talking about the Cherson region and Zaporizhia, I'm not sure that for Russians it will be successful. These attempts to get more attentions from Ukrainian forces, because first of all, in Kherson Oblast we have a stabilization of frontline by Dnieper River, and it's impossible for Russians to create a new threat for Ukrainian forces. So Ukrainian forces could be moved to another, let's say, important areas and points on the battlefield. And of course, in Zaporizhia, it should be opposite situation. Ukrainian forces now is preparing offensive operations here, so Russians could try to conduct some counteroffensive, or maybe just some attacks or to have some impact on Ukrainian forces to stop the preparations for offensive operation in southern direction. But in the same time, I think more interesting now is the situation in Belarus, which is now very actively presenting in the informational space, with kind of creating of imagination that something happening there, but in reality we don't see any strengthening of Russian troops in Belarus. So we have,
despite the fact,
kind of
Mykhaylo, excuse me to interrupt you. One day ago, the counselor of the office of the president, Arestovich, he told that a lot of experts are blowing up this situation around the borders of Belarus. So how do you see this? What is your vision? Is there any possibilities Belarus will join the war, or there are more talks than there could be the actions? Because recently our military forces told that the possibility is really very, 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 very low.
First of all, unfortunately, doesn't exist any Belarus entity if you're talking about the international relations. It's totally occupied by Russia and totally controlled by Russia. Armed forces, even Lukashenko, is trying to play some personal, I would say, political life, but it's only about his personal political life, not about the country and nation, Belarus nation. Unfortunately, Belarus nation are now under the Russian occupation. And in this case, in this reason, we have that situation when Russians preparing the using of Belarus armed forces, or part of Belarus armed forces, in own interest, as a part of a future offensive group of troops from Belarus territory to Ukrainian territory. So now we don't have the information that Russia has enough troops on Belarus territory. They have approximately 10,000 Russian troops here, and they have like 15,000, 20,000 of Belarus special operations troops and airborne troops. But together, it's not enough to conduct the really successful, or even pretending to be successful operation against Ukraine. So they need, I think, for my estimation, it should be at least 50,000 together, and maybe 80 or even 100,000 together, Russian and Belarus troops, to have a successful operation, at least on 3 directions, with main efforts and additional efforts, or fake efforts. So I think it's not enough yet. So I think that it will be some signals, some signs that Russia is transferring more troops to Belarus, and it should be very fast and intensive movement of troops, like thousands per day. So I think Ukrainian intelligence will see these signs and will be prepared. Mm-hmm. I mean, to give information to our forces to be prepared to these potential operations. For now, we don't have this signs. We don't have information about the enough forces in Belarus, and I think that at least they need at least 1 month to create this like 50,000, 100,000 troops to organize and conduct these operations.
Yeah, so it's like a way of distraction of Ukrainian military forces. So, Mykhaylo, what do you feel about the progress of supplying to Ukraine some offensive autonomous weapons? We know that there are problems with the quantity of it. We don't have it. So, how things are going on with the supply to Ukraine such weapons to attack the enemy? Because these weapons is the way how Ukraine could attack.
Yeah, we had a deficit with the projectiles for artillery, and
how
now
strong
it looks
this
like
deficit is, Mykhaylo?
Say again.
How difficult is situation with such offensive weapons? How much of such military stuff we have?
Yeah, I cannot say that we don't have a critical situation with offensive weapon. We still have enough of it, especially Soviet type of tanks, armored vehicles, and we have a lot of supplying of Western light armor vehicles, hundreds of them. We have hundreds of Western artillery with NATO standard caliber. But I think it was a right decision to start to launch producing of Soviet caliber 152 and 122 caliber for artillery in Ukraine and even in NATO countries, the former Warsaw Pact countries. They decided to invest in refreshing of producing of projectiles for Soviet artillery caliber, and I think it will be a solution for next stage of the war when Ukrainian forces still have hundreds of these Soviet artillery with Soviet calibers. So we need a lot of projectiles for this artillery for next months, and I think it will be absolutely right. Do not switch totally to NATO standards if we still have hundreds of tubes of Soviet artillery. Talking about, I think that the deficit now, what critically is a deficit, is missile defense. It's not offensive weapon, but it's a defensive weapon, and Putin hopes to change the strategic picture of the war is not actually the battlefield, because he understood a long time ago that this war finished for him, and he lost this war. I think he understood it 24th of February, I hope. But he's trying to use hybrid methods, for example, destroying Ukrainian grid's energy system, and to protect Ukrainian territory. I remind that Ukrainian territory is the biggest. Ukraine is the biggest country in Europe in case of territory. So to protect this huge territory.
Mykhaylo, excuse me to interrupt you here. I would like to dive in the situation. We heard this week that Russia has the potential to make these strikes that we felt here in Kiev for 2-3 times, and there won't be more weapons because they just produced this year from February 240 missiles, as I could hear from our military forces. So what is your estimation? How many of such really barrage of airstrikes we could feel in Ukraine, like you told, so on energy infrastructure, on civilian infrastructure?
I think we should count on the worst case scenario when for example, Russia.
So it's too optimistic, you think, to 3 barrages?
No, I mean, Russia could get the Iranian ballistic missiles, and it looks like Iran finally decided to send them to Russia. So in this case, Russia could have a lot of missiles. I mean that. Of course, we could say that, okay, they will have 200 missiles, 300 missiles, but anyway, it will be dangerous for Ukrainian infrastructure, Ukrainian civilian infrastructure, Ukrainian cities. So we need a lot of missile defense. Unfortunately, we don't have any missile defense. We have some NASAMS and Iris-T systems, but they first of all they have a middle range capabilities, and they have capabilities to protect some cities, some objects, some critical infrastructure. But we need to protect our territory, and only way to protect our territory to have a system like Patriots. Of course, a lot of experts told that it's very expensive, it's
$2-3
not very effective,
million, yeah.
Come on, we don't have any solutions, other solutions, but have Patriots here, and I think that finally United States could activate this lend-lease procedure and actually transfer to us these Patriots. We will use it. Them, and after this we'll return. Yeah, we don't need, in normal life, we don't need a lot of Patriots. We only need it to be protected from crazy neighbor
so
who is trying to destroy us. So
we need?
After war, we will return to United States.
How many of Patriots we need?
Of course, it's a secret information, but I would say that we need Patriots enough to protect our territory. I think military will count it. It's very easy. But anyway, we don't have any Patriots yet.
There are 2 points here. First one, what I know. So to work out lend-lease, it needs 2-3 months after the approval of White House. Then the next thing is that the supply of Patriots isn't easy because international militants should teach Ukrainians how to use them, and it takes like 2-3 months and even a year, what I heard from American experts. What do you make of it?
Okay, I think that Ukrainian specialists in air defense is the best in the world. The best in the world because
I agree with you.
Nobody from our American friends in air defense never protect a country with hundreds of missiles kind of launched from crazy Russian launchers. So I'm sure that Ukrainian specialists will very fast in getting the ability or capability to use these Patriots from another point of view.
And lend-lease, what about lend-lease? So could we get without lend-lease, Patriots? So the approval of lend-lease takes 2-3 months. Do you agree with my words?
So you see, the war is continuing more than 10 months. If a political decision be made, let's say, 9 months ago, so now we had a Ukrainian specialist ready to fight with Patriots. Unfortunately, we didn't have this political decision. Talking about lend-lease, I think that this is the best way in financial side, because if we're talking about the market price of Patriots, it's a crazy price. It's billions of dollars. But if you look at the quantity of these Patriots and the age of these Patriots, I'm not sure that it's billions. Even in open sources, we have information that United States have something like 1,000 Patriots, 1,000, with more than 10,000 missiles on the stockpiles. Okay, so could the United States just give us some leasing of this, let's say 50 of Patriots instead of 1,000? Because I think it's a pretty older system. So if we don't need it to buy, we don't need it to have it for always. We need just to protect our country on this war, which is continue Russia. So I think the lend-lease could be a solution in case of money, in case of financial side. If United States wants to use another financial mechanism, maybe some defense industry will be interested in profit on this situation. Okay, you could use, you could put on this tag on this price $5 billion for one complex for American taxpayers. We don't care actually. If you'd like to help us, please make political decision. Please organize a financial side of the deal. We proposing lend-lease because it's I think it's cheaper. It's easier because it's leasing, and we will return it after war. It won't cost a lot of money. If you'd like to let's say make a profit for defense industry, United States defense industry, okay, you could make this mechanism.
Mykhaylo, how do you feel about the situation with the military aid to Ukraine? So, as I know, December 16th expired the law thanks to which Ukraine get the military stuff, military aid from US. So, and then we won't have any law and how Ukraine will get the military stuff after this point of time.
I'm not sure that we won't have any law. At least we have a law of budget of the United States. And in this budget, military part, we have 80 million, at least 80 million for next year. But of course, it's without any other packages, and of course without lend-lease. So I think it will be continue without any problem, and even more. I'm sure that it will be more and more help, because everybody see that it's finishing of this war depends on how many weapons Ukraine will have on frontline and how many capabilities Ukraine will have to destroy enemy. So I'm sure that United States will continue to help us and support us with HIMARS, with all of ammunitions, and of course I hope that for Patriot will come soon in to Ukrainian air defense and missile defense.
Okay, I feel that it will be like that. Thank you very much, Mykhaylo, for this talk. Thank you for your fruitful answers. And I will be happy if you join our show one more time.
Okay, thank you very much for inviting me. I will be happy to participate next time.
Don't forget to be subscribed to Politeka World to be in the heart of the most important news about the war in Ukraine. Leave comments because your point of view is very important for us.